First story. Delusional OP accused her husband of cheating, physically assaulted him, then falsely reported him to the police for DV, causing her husband to lose his job and ruining his whole life, believing her friend. Now regretting everything. Edit. I've been reading the responses and honestly I can't argue with anything you've said. I don't think I realized the full extent of how horrible my actions were until I saw it written out, blunt and unfiltered. I destroyed my husband's life because of my insecurities and my inability to communicate or even stop and think rationally. This post isn't about asking for forgiveness, I don't deserve it. But I'm writing this in the hopes that someone else in the same mindset as I was can see this and stop themselves before they do something irreversible. I've never been more ashamed of myself than I am now. I ruined my marriage because I believed a lie and worse. I escalated things to a point where I don't know if I'll ever be able to fix the damage I caused. It's eating me alive. To give you some context, I've been married to my husband Ethan for 10 years. He's always been the calm, steady one in our relationship, the kind of guy who does everything by the book. I'm more emotional. I've always struggled with trust, partly because of things that happened before we met. But Ethan knew that about me and was always patient. Until recently. A few months ago, Ethan got promoted at work. He's a software engineer, and this was a big deal for him, a chance to lead a team on a major project. I was proud of him at first. We even celebrated with dinner at his favorite steakhouse. But as the weeks went on, the promotion started to feel more like a curse than a blessing. He started coming home late, sometimes past midnight, saying he was stuck in meetings or troubleshooting issues with clients. At first, I believed him. I wanted to be supportive. Even when it started to feel like we were barely seeing each other anymore. Then I noticed a pattern. He was always texting this one coworker, Rebecca. I'd heard about her before. She's part of his team, and he'd mentioned her in passing as being really smart and hardworking. I didn't think much of it until I saw her name pop up on his phone late one night. The message wasn't anything scandalous, just something about staying late to finish up a task. But my gut twisted. Why was she texting him at 10:30 p.m.? I tried to ignore it, but the doubt was already in my head, and once it's there, it's impossible to shake. I started noticing other things. How distracted he seemed when he was home. How he didn't laugh at my jokes like he used to. How he was suddenly protective of his phone. He'd always been open before his phone would sit face up on the counter. And we didn't have any of those privacy rules some couples swear by. But now he started taking it with him everywhere, even to the bathroom. I vented to my best friend Tanya, and she was quick to jump on the something's wrong train. Tanya's been in my life forever, and she's always had my back. But she's also the type to assume the worst when it comes to men. Her last relationship ended in flames when she caught her ex cheating, so she's always warning me to be careful. When I told her about Ethan and Rebecca, she didn't hold back. She kept saying stuff like, "You need to be smart about this and don't let him make a fool of you." She even suggested I start looking for evidence. I felt sick even thinking about snooping, but the seed was already planted. One night when Ethan said he had a team dinner, Tanya convinced me to check his laptop. I didn't find anything, just work emails and boring spreadsheets, but instead of feeling relieved I felt more paranoid. Maybe he was deleting everything. Maybe he was hiding it somewhere I hadn't thought to look. Tanya kept telling me that's exactly what cheaters do, and I believed her. The breaking point came a few weeks later. Ethan had been out late almost every night that week, and when I asked if we could plan a date night, he brushed me off, saying he was too busy. That night I saw another text from Rebecca, something about how he was saving the day by staying late again. I don't know what came over me, but I completely lost it. I was sitting in bed, staring at my phone, and all I could think was, he's cheating. He's lying to me and I'm just letting it happen. When he walked in the door, I was waiting for him. I don't even remember half of what I said, but I know I was yelling. He looked confused at first, like he had no idea where this was coming from. But the more I pushed, the angrier he got. He kept saying he wasn't cheating, that I was making things up in my head. At one point I accused him of using work as an excuse to screw around with Rebecca, and he just snapped. Not physically, Ethan would never lay a hand on me, but he shouted something about how exhausting it was to come home to accusations after working 14-hour days. In the heat of the moment I slapped him. I don't know what possessed me to do it. I'd never laid a hand on anyone before, but I was so angry, and all I wanted was for him to admit he was doing something wrong. Instead, he just stood there, looking at me like I was a stranger. Then he turned around, grabbed his keys, and walked out. The moment Ethan walked out the door, I felt like I'd crossed a line I couldn't come back from. My hands still stung, and my head was spinning with everything I'd said to him. I wanted to chase after him, to apologize for losing control, but I couldn't move. It was like I was paralyzed, stuck in this loop of trying to justify what I'd done. I kept telling myself I was right, that he was hiding something and deserved to be called out, but a part of me was already doubting it. I texted Tanya, telling her about the argument. I didn't go into much detail at first, just that Ethan and I had fought and that things got heated. She called me right away and I poured everything out. I told her about Rebecca's texts, Ethan's late nights, how distant he'd been, and finally how I'd slapped him. Tanya's reaction wasn't what I expected. She wasn't shocked or even concerned. Instead, she said I was finally standing up for myself, that I was doing what any smart woman would do in my position. She started throwing out all these suggestions, things I could do to protect myself, or make sure Ethan didn't take advantage of me. At first, I was just listening, nodding along without really thinking about it. But then she said something that stopped me cold. She told me I should consider filing a report. I remember just sitting there, the words hanging in the air. I'd never even thought about going to the police. It felt like too much, like something you only do in the most extreme situations. But Tanya didn't see it that way. She kept bringing up how I needed to take control, how men like Ethan would always turn the tables if you gave them the chance. I don't know why I let her get in my head like that. Maybe it was because I felt so cornered, like I'd already gone too far to back down. Or maybe I just wanted someone to tell me I wasn't overreacting, that what I was doing made sense. Whatever the reason, the next morning I found myself driving to the police station. I told them that Ethan had gotten physical during our fight. I said he grabbed me and left a mark on my wrist, even though I knew that wasn't true. The mark was from something stupid. I think I'd bumped it carrying groceries earlier in the week. But it was enough to make my story seem believable. The whole time I felt sick. I kept telling myself it was the right thing to do, that if Ethan was innocent, he'd be able to clear his name. But deep down, I think I knew I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. When Ethan came home later that day, he looked completely drained. He didn't even say anything at first, just sat down on the couch with his head in his hands. I wanted to talk to him, to say something that might make things better. But before I could, there was a knock at the door. It was the police. Watching them explain the situation to Ethan was like watching a nightmare unfold in slow motion. He was confused, asking over and over what this was about. But I just stood there, frozen. When they mentioned the report, he looked at me and I thought for a second he was going to say something. But he didn't. He went with them. The guilt hit me the second the door closed behind him. I thought I'd feel justified, like I was finally getting some kind of closure. But all I felt was this overwhelming sense of dread. I called Tanya to tell her what happened, thinking she'd reassure me. But instead, she seemed frustrated. She said it wasn't enough, that Ethan would probably just talk his way out of it, and come back acting like nothing had happened. Her words unsettled me. For the first time, I started to wonder if Tanya was pushing me for the wrong reasons. But by then it was too late. Things were already spiraling out of control. The next few days were a blur. Ethan's boss found out about the report, and even though no charges had been filed yet, they decided to suspend him. A week later he was fired completely. I remember seeing him come back to pack up some of his things. He didn't say a word to me. He barely even looked at me. I should have felt vindicated, but I didn't. All I could think about was the look on his face when the police showed up. How he'd seemed more hurt than angry. The realization started to sink in. I might have just destroyed the one good thing I had in my life. The days after Ethan left felt like I was living in some surreal nightmare. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and every time my phone buzzed, my stomach dropped. I was consumed by this sinking feeling that I'd gone too far. But I couldn't bring myself to face it. The first real gut punch came when Ethan's parents called me. They'd heard about the situation apparently. He told them everything. His mom was furious, and I don't blame her. She said things I'll never forget, things I probably deserved to hear. She called me a liar, a manipulator, and accused me of trying to ruin her son's life. What hit the hardest wasn't her words, though. It was the fact that Ethan hadn't said anything bad about me. She told me he didn't defend himself much, and didn't try argue about what happened. All he said was that he didn't know who I was anymore. I broke down after that call. It was like every shred of justification I'd clung to was crumbling. But instead of owning up to what I'd done, I turned back to Tanya. She was the only one who seemed to be on my side, but even her support felt off. Every time I talked about how guilty I was feeling, she'd brush it off. She'd remind me that I'd done what I had to do, and that Ethan was just reaping what he'd sown. She was so insistent that I'd made the right choice. But the more she talked, the more I started to question her motives. It wasn't just what she said, it was the way she said it. Almost like she was enjoying the chaos, like she got a thrill out of seeing my life fall apart. I started to think about all the times she'd made little digs about Ethan over the years, how she'd always been skeptical of him for no real reason. And then it hit me. Maybe this wasn't about protecting me at all. Maybe Tanya had her own reasons for wanting to see Ethan out of the picture. But even as those thoughts started to creep in, I couldn't bring myself to cut her off. She was my safety net. The only person who hadn't turned their back on me. And I felt like I needed her, even if I didn't fully trust her anymore. The second blow came about a week later. Ethan's lawyer sent me a letter informing me that he was filing for divorce. I don't know why it shocked me so much. I mean, what did I expect? But seeing it in writing made it feel real in a way that nothing else had. This wasn't just a fight we could work through. This was the end. Along with the divorce papers, his lawyer included copies of emails and text messages that Ethan's coworkers had submitted as part of the firm's internal investigation. Most of them were boring work stuff, but a few stood out. One of them was from Rebecca, the coworker I'd been so suspicious of. She'd sent an email to their manager weeks ago, thanking Ethan for all the extra hours he'd put in to help organize some kind of surprise celebration for the team. Apparently, he'd been working late to finalize the details for a project launch party, and he hadn't told me about it because he wanted to surprise me with an invite. I sat there staring at the email, my chest tightening as the realization sank in. He wasn't cheating. He wasn't hiding anything. He was just trying to do something nice. And I'd turned it into a nightmare. The third and final blow came a few days after that. A mutual friend reached out to me, someone who works at the same company as Ethan. They told me about how much this whole thing had destroyed him. Not just losing his job, but the humiliation of being dragged through the mud by someone he'd trusted. Apparently, most of his coworkers had rallied around him, even Rebecca. They all knew the truth and they knew I'd lied. Hearing that made everything hit home. I'd ruined his life. All because I couldn't keep my insecurities in check. And for what? To prove a point. To protect myself from a threat that didn't even exist. I started avoiding Tanya after that. I couldn't bring myself to confront her outright. But I knew I couldn't keep leaning on her either. Every time I thought about talking to her, I felt this deep, gnawing resentment. She'd pushed me into this, sure, but I'd let her. This is where I am now. Sitting in the wreckage of everything I've destroyed. I don't know if Ethan will ever forgive me. And honestly, I don't think I deserve it. I'm trying to figure out how to move forward. But I don't even know where to start. Second story. Entitled parents forced me to go and see with my grandma for choosing grandpa in their divorce. Then abandoned me for staying in contact with her. Now my grandma has died and I inherited her will. My parents came back demanding I give up my inheritance and make them the whole beneficiary of the accounts, threatening to disown me. Yes, I have included the state or country in the post. Hello, I am in desperate need of advice. I live in another state, but this is being handled in Texas. My family and I have always had a very rocky relationship. My grandmother was one of the few family members I had a close personal relationship with. I grew up with parents who were neglectful at best and emotionally abusive at their worst. My grandmother was my constant support system and my cheerleader in everything that I did. When I was 16, she and my grandfather got divorced, and things turned hostile quickly. My parents decided to side with my grandfather during the divorce due to several personal factors that were not my grandmother's fault, and ended up forcing me to cut contact with her for several years. When I moved away for college, I reached back out to update her about my life and checked in regularly. My parents found out a year down the line, and our relationship took a steep downturn. My mom would not respond to any calls or texts for 3 months. My dad would only respond if had an emergency. Despite this, I continued to keep in contact with my grandma, and did the best I could to call off of friends' phones to keep my parents out of my privacy as much as possible. This summer my mom suddenly decided to fly to my home state, and she lied to me about why she was going. Several days later I receive a call from her letting me know that my grandmother has terminal cancer and not very much time to live. Over the course of the next 3 months, I begged my parents to fly me home and let me see her. Finally, towards the last few days I got to go in and hug her and tell her I loved her. When she passed, my mom handled all of her estate and death arrangements. It has been a few months since she has passed, and I got a phone call from my dad several days ago, letting me know that I was the beneficiary of her IRA account. I am 20 years old and currently supported by my parents, while I attend college for some reference. My grandmother and grandfather were divorced years prior, and his name is not listed on the account. However, my parents are claiming that he was awarded the money in their divorce, and expect me to fully withdraw the money in cash and transfer it to him. After finding out that I had been left something, I spent days researching and trying to figure out how to get the money transferred. I am still actively working on this. However, it is proving to be very difficult. I spoke with my mom on the phone today, and it seemed as though she knew I wasn't in complete agreement with the plan despite me not saying anything against it yet. She gave me an ultimatum of giving away the money or losing them and their support. I have been told a wide variety of numbers as to what is in the account, but I will not be able to know the exact amount until I am able to receive some of the necessary documents. I'm fearful as I'm currently in school and am not in a place to fully financially support myself. But I want to make my grandmother happy and fulfill her wish. I'm also afraid that that wish might not have been fully thought through, and I'm worried about hurting my grandfather. If you were in this situation or you have been in a situation like this, what would you do? Update 1. I wanted to update a few things that I've seen throughout the comments. My mother is the executor of the will. I have seen the will, and there is no mention of the account or me in it. The company that holds the money is Fidelity, and it is a Roth IRA. I have called the agency and spoken with several agents. I am required to provide an SSN and death certificate before they will answer any of my questions. My mother has both documents currently, and will not send them to me as she wants to oversee everything. She has explicitly told me that she doesn't trust that I won't spend the money, and therefore is going to force me to name her as the beneficiary of my account in case something happened to me. I am currently working to order copies of the documents, but it is proving difficult as I am not considered immediate family by Texas law and will need supporting documents to prove a legal need for a death certificate. I moved to a different state for college, which has also made this more complex, as my information is coming from over the phone and not in person. I have applied to several agencies in both Texas and my current state, and I am waiting to hear back about receiving legal aid. Although I trust none of the information I have been provided so far, it seems as though my grandpa has no idea my parents are planning to do this. I want to call and speak with him, but we have never had a close relationship, and I'm worried he may be more a part of this than I am aware of. Thank you for all of your advice. Update 2. Hello everyone, I am so thankful to have so many of y'all reaching out to offer advice. It has been invaluable. Currently, I am working with Fidelity to find a workaround for the beneficiary designation letter. I have an official meeting set up on Friday, and will be asking plenty of questions, as well as adding a code phrase to the account to ensure its safety. I have continued to play nice with my parents, but I have not had any success in getting the documents from her, as she states that she needs to be there to help me. My main concern right now is gathering as much of the necessary documents as possible prior to meeting with my family. I have contacted my school's legal aid group, and am waiting for them to set up a time to meet. I have also reached out to several low-cost or pro bono groups in both Texas and my current residence. I intend to have them fully explain why they believe this money does not belong to me, and provide me with all of the paperwork regarding my grandfather's ownership of the account once I have access to the money myself. While I do not have an entirely solid plan yet, I feel a lot better about the security of this account, and I am fully prepared to fight my parents for this money, if I determine that it truly belongs to me. Update 3. Hello everyone, I have some more to update everyone with. Fidelity now has the death certificate, as my mom has sent it in. I am still missing an SSN, which makes that unhelpful. I have spent time going through many of your suggestions. I have called with pro bono lawyers and gotten consultation from my school's legal aid, but I have not gotten very much additional information through them. I called the company after that, and was informed that they couldn't answer questions until I could provide my grandma's SSN. I also was originally misinformed about the account, and want to update that it is a traditional IRA, not a Roth. I'm aware of the tax penalty on the account, and that will absolutely affect what I sign and how I handle the money. I spoke with my mother via text today, and she informed me that they had lawyers and a judge involved in this. Her claim is that when the divorce was finalized, a check was cut to my grandma and grandpa. According to her, my GPA was unable to cash the check without my GMA's signature. But somehow my GMA was able to open the account with that check, therefore making it impossible for my GPA to show the company the divorce decree and resolve it himself. I would appreciate it if anyone could answer whether or not this is feasible or if she is lying. I have agreed to meeting with her on Tuesday, and I should hopefully be able to get the SSN from her at that point. Additionally, anything set up during that meeting will be immediately changed afterwards to prevent her from gaining access. She admitted that they have no legal claim to this money, and I'm determined to do the right thing despite how she has treated me throughout this process. I appreciate every single person that has given me advice and condolences. I don't believe I would have felt half the confidence to fight this fight without it. I will update when I know more. Third story. I was way too comfortable with my Bill, and my entitled husband accused me of cheating on him. Then he went to Bill and told him to stay away from me. So I kicked my husband out of the house. I, 26F, have been married to my husband 27M for a year. I dated him for 5 years and finally got married to him last year. He's always been perfect for me, and I simply cannot understand why he is acting like this all of a sudden and so suspicious about me and my Bill. I didn't even know that my husband was insecure about my relationship with my Bill. I got to know about it from my Bill and I don't like this at all. I also don't want to ruin my perfect marriage over some misunderstanding. But I am really mad at my husband for not trusting me. I always had a great relationship with my Bill. He's 3 years younger than me. Ever since my husband introduced me to his family, I and my Bill got along. I think of him as my younger brother. It's kind of funny that I get along with him more than my own brothers and we joke about it. My Bill is very frank with me and so am I. He often jokes and makes me laugh in front of our family or if we spend time alone. And he always helps me, which is why we are so damn close to each other. Like 7 months ago when I was sick, my husband wasn't present to help me. He was in a different city because of his new job. It was my brother-in-law who helped me and stayed with me for a week. He helped me with chores, cooking and laundry. Even when I asked him to not let me bother him, he just said, "Sis, it's my responsibility to help you and take care of you in my brother's absence." But 3 months ago my Bill got distant. Usually my Bill used to check up on me and call me every few days. But he got distant. He would come over for dinner and spend time with me when I was alone. But he stopped. I thought maybe he was going through something. I asked him but he just brushed it off. But he started avoiding me more and stopped visiting me. And I started growing anxious. So I visited him 4 days ago. I wanted to know the reason. After I visited him and pressured him, he told me that his brother asked him to stay away from me. And he doesn't like the fact that we are so close, especially when he's not around. And he finds our close bond disgusting. I hugged him and said that I will talk to my husband and comfort him, because I think he's just as hurt as I am. My husband is accusing his brother and his wife. And it's disgusting. I love both men. The only difference is I love my husband romantically and sexually. And I love my brother-in-law because I think of him as my brother. Anyway, I confronted my husband. And he kept telling me and explaining himself, how he wanted to hide it from me. And how he thinks that me being close to my Bill is icky, and people will judge us, etc., etc. I said F those who think about us like this. And I don't care. I will continue to be close to my Bill. And I am disappointed that you have so little trust in me and your own brother. He said he's sorry. I told him to get out and not return until I tell him. My husband laughed. But he constantly calls me and texts me. I reply to him and ask him how he's doing, etc. But I didn't tell him to come back, even though he has asked me a lot. I am still angry at him for how he's thinking. So am I the arsehole for kicking my husband out? I don't like that I kicked my husband. But I am angry and hate the way he's thinking. Relevant comments. Commenter. Your Bill isn't acting like a brother. He's acting like a boyfriend. He comforts you when your husband is away. He helps you out when you're alone. And that's why you're so damn close. Took care of you for a week and stayed at your house while doing so. Says he has to act this way due to your husband being absent. And you're acting like a girlfriend. You provided physical comfort to this man right after he told you your husband wasn't okay with it. YTA. Up. F no. My Bill isn't acting like a boyfriend. And I am not acting like his girlfriend. I am married. And my Bill looks out for me when my husband isn't present to help me. And why is it so bad for me to share a roof with my Bill? I am instead very happy that my husband's family is so accepting and helpful to me. I was sick, so he stayed with me. I am sure if my husband's parents know about this, they will back us up instead of thinking about this disgusting SHT. Also no, I didn't provide physical comfort to my Bill. I gave him a hug, which I have been doing for years. I am not ashamed of hugging him. Alone or in front of everyone. Because I think of him as my brother. Texas_sucks15. I would say your reaction was a little extreme. Obviously this is an insecurity with your husband. But you're treating it like he is the one that cheated by having those valid thoughts. He finally became honest with you. And you responded by kicking him out. It will hinder your communication going forward. Up. Yes, I agree my reaction was extreme, because I am extremely effing disappointed that my husband doesn't trust me. He basically accused me of having an affair, which is not good at all in marriage. I am extremely angry at him. He became honest with me. Why didn't he just communicate with me about his insecurities? He told me after I confronted him that if I hadn't talked to my Bill, I would have never known that my husband doesn't trust me. Do I not have the right to be angry at my husband after I found out my husband doesn't trust me and accuses me of sleeping with my Bill? Update. I posted 2 days ago and realized that I truly effed up by kicking him out and dismissing his concern with my Bill. And for those who are asking me if I am in Bill's sheets or if I got the hots for him, I don't, and it's disgusting. I truly think of him as my younger brother and always thought of him as one I would never cheat on my husband with. And I kicked him out of his house because I was pissed at him for accusing me of having an affair with his own brother. My husband indirectly accused me of having an affair, and there's no way he can justify it. If my Bill, my brother, ever hinted or asked me that he wants to be with me, I would literally slap him and tell everyone in our family, especially my husband, and avoid him. But after all these years I know that my Bill thinks of me as his sister and I adore him. He stayed with me and visits me because he is concerned about me, so stop with disgusting DMs and replies. Anyway, I asked my husband to come back, and told him it's better for us to talk it out than just stay apart and become paranoid. My husband came back and told me that he doesn't like how close I am with my Bill. He said that his friends keep telling him that he and his brother are sharing a woman and tease him. I asked him what he wants. I asked if he wants me to stay away from his brother. He said he does. I said then I will do it. I will not talk to his brother as much and forget about treating him as my brother. I called my Bill and told him that we should stay away from each other, and should only interact when our family members are present and keep it minimal. He said he is okay with it, and he has been thinking about it, and he thinks it's not worth so much drama and will keep his distance from me. My Bill asked me to pass the phone to my husband, and my Bill apologized to my husband and said he would stay away from me, and won't be as close to me as he was before. They talked and agreed, and now my Bill is going to avoid me, which is better than my husband being mad at me and avoiding me. But I told my husband that he better not think about the fact that I would secretly meet his brother. We both were transparent and never hid anything from you. If I am losing my friend and my brother, just because he's your brother and I have known him for years, then I will stay away from all men. But don't you dare suspect me of cheating ever again. I said that he's not allowed to stay close to other women either, his friends or cousins or my cousins, because it goes both ways. I stay away from his brother and cousins and he does the same. He agreed and he's back. But it doesn't feel the same way to me. I feel like he accused me of sleeping with someone else, and that someone is his own damn brother. I know my brother or Bill I guess wouldn't betray his brother, and even I am to stay away from him. My husband would think that I am cheating when he's not around, and I don't feel comfortable about this. I love my husband because he's mine sexually and physically, but I also love my Bill emotionally because I think of him as my brother. I have no idea if I could have handled my situation any better, because I am also currently angry about all this. Relevant comments illustrious_bus 9486. Your demands just heightened his suspicions that you will go behind his back. Up. No, if he's still suspicious of me, then we do not trust each other. And we should divorce. If I were to go behind my husband's back and sleep with his brother, why would we even tell him the truth? We can continue our affair while my husband is away. Hell, I can even have affairs with other men when he's not around. And nobody would know about it, at least not now. But me and my brother informed and kept updating my husband whenever he was around and when he stayed with me. I think it's perfectly reasonable that to fix my marriage, I should stay away from other men and not be as close as I am to Bill, and he does the same. I think it should go both ways and we should stop suspecting each other of all this disgusting SHT. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button and share it with your friends.